Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for July 12th through 18th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 2 shows, and I listened to 3 books. First this week I finished my arc for Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. This one came out on Tuesday and it was gruesome and I loved it. I feel like this is something I've said a million times before, but I don't really like to go into my books knowing too much, so I didn't know the synopsis on this one at all. I just knew it was by Chuck Tingle and what the cover looked like, and obviously the title, and that's all I had to go on. This one starts out with a woman named Poppy. As we meet her, she's about to do a heist of sorts. It's just a very unusual type of heist because she is stealing a body. Her night job involves acquiring and delivering bodies to whoever will pay for them. By day, she's an influencer, and she's very specific that these 2 jobs will never meet. She also has a big fancy house that is probably too much house for her and her daughter, but you know, you gotta show off that wealth on Instagram to get all the clicks and the hearts and the whatever the heck people go for. And she tells herself she's doing both of these jobs for her daughter, but that means she doesn't end up spending adequate time with her daughter. She does have great childcare in the form of this guy who's basically an uncle to her kid, but she's been leaning pretty heavily on him and he doesn't ask any questions about her second job. Another thing you know right from the get-go is she is obsessed with this one very specific music creator, so she is absolutely devastated when he suddenly passes away. And because I can put 2 and 2 together, I know that she's going to get a call to go acquire his body. That is the very brief setup. It definitely goes from there and things definitely change from there and get weirder and creepier and more gruesome from there. But I'm going to save that for you because like I said, I didn't know anything going in, and that's kind of, if I wanted to know anything, that's about as far as I would want to know. This one in certain parts got very cinematic to the point where in my head I'm just picturing certain scenes already as a film. So I would love if this got an adaptation. That would be absolutely fantastic. The second book I read with my eyeballs I finished yesterday, and that's Crafting for Sinners. This one is about this woman who lives in a very small town with her girlfriend who is actually her roommate, if anybody asks, because this small town is very conservative and they're both from here, so they feel like they kind of have to stay here, but they also want to leave because they'd like to be able to, you know, hold hands in public. Our main character is bisexual and she actually used to have a fiance who actually proposed to her at prom. But when she had this realization about herself and she told the fiance, he completely was like, nope, until you figure out this whole sinning thing you got going on, no, and she broke up with him. Now it's years later and somehow her employers at this craft store she used to work at, which is owned by the church, somehow found out about her sexual orientation and fired her because her values don't align with their own or some other bullshit like that, which seems super illegal, but at the same time this whole town is really into this one specific church that owns this craft store. Since then she hasn't really been able to get that many jobs. She does some crafting commissions along the way and she's really trying to work up to her and her girlfriend being able to leave town. However, she's also diabetic and that comes with a lot of medical costs for certain things she needs just to survive. One of the ways she kind of tries to stick it to the man is every time she goes for crafting supplies, because she still goes to the store because it's still the closest store by far, is she employs a 5-finger discount, and she realizes she doesn't have enough wool for the custom piece she's trying to get done by tomorrow morning, so she has to go. But this visit to the store is definitely very different than every other visit. It was a complete accident that I read this back-to-back with Fabulous Bodies, but I actually really recommend it because these are both wonderful queer horror books. And like I said about the former, this one also gets very gruesome at points. That's kind of an understatement, actually. As for what I watched this week, I watched the finale of the 18th season of Jet Lag, and I won't tell you how it goes because like I said, it's not up on YouTube until this coming Wednesday. However, it was entertaining, certain things happened, and I don't think there's much more I can tell you, otherwise you'll probably be able to figure out who wins. I was entertained, and I know that they've already filmed season 19, so I'm excited for whenever that comes out. The other thing I watched was a single episode of Future Man, the 5th episode in the 1st season, and what I love about this show is it is not afraid to be absolutely ridiculous and put these characters in ridiculous circumstances. So you have these 2 characters who are from the video game or from the future who are more, let's say, efficient in their approaches. they're like, okay, if we want to weed out one specific person, but we can't figure out which one of these employees is that type of person, let's just kill them all, and whoever doesn't actually die from this one specific thing is the person that we're looking for. And Josh Futterman is like, how about we don't kill everybody I work with? How about we do something less drastic, like poisoning everybody, so most people will get sick and then the ones we're looking for won't. This leads to basically a training montage of one of them having to learn how to cook a very specific and difficult thing to cook, while other characters are having to learn other specific things for this mission, like how to walk in tiny stilts, as Tiger calls them, and I laughed so hard. And it always feels like Josh is juggling multiple things just to keep things on track so a bunch of people don't have to die. Like I said, I'm very much enjoying the show. The first of the 3 audiobooks I finished this week is Hellbent. This is the second in the Alex Stern trilogy. The third book is coming out in September, and now I'm just waiting for that to happen because I'd like to know how this story is going to end. I obviously can't tell you too much about this one because it will spoil things that happened in the first book, which I believe I read last month. The first book, of course, being Ninth House. So this is about a woman named Alex Stern. Her actual name is Galaxy, which I think is hilarious because I think it would have taken me a really long time to shorten Galaxy to Alex, but I really like it. And her entire life she's always been able to see ghosts, or as Yale calls them, greys. And this led to some pretty dire circumstances before somebody from Yale basically plucked her out of obscurity and kind of fixed things so that she could go to Yale, but she also has to work for the Ninth House, which is a society that basically makes sure that the other 8 societies aren't doing things they shouldn't be doing. Not that there's ever any repercussions for that outside of a couple of fines and a slap on the wrist. Her being able to see ghosts is really, really, really helpful because as the other societies are doing secret society things and doing spells or whatnot, sometimes the ghosts are really attracted by this and they will try to interfere with things, and that's not something they want because regular people can't see ghosts unless they take an elixir, and that can be dangerous and all these types of things, whereas she can just see them and be like, no, stop it. That's the setup to the series as a whole. This second book in the series definitely continues the mission of the first book, and I won't tell you how successful they might have been. I will tell you that certain side characters that we meet in the first one show up again in this one, which was very interesting. There's different types of magical people that are included in this. I don't want to tell you exactly why, but also it's important. And like I said, I'm very much looking forward to the third book coming out in September. The second audiobook I listened to was Witches. This one is translated from Spanish, and this one takes place in Mexico. This one goes back and forth between 2 different first-person accounts. The first one is this woman who is older. We don't know how old she is. They didn't have records when she was a kid. She has no idea. And she is revered in her community because she has this certain language that she is the keeper of. At least that's how she describes it. Basically, she can do these certain things with different ingredients, and she can heal people. Our other point of view character is a journalist, and we get to see basically her life and her backstory throughout this book. And you come to realize that the journalist is the person that is interviewing the first character that we're seeing, and we see them in alternating chapters. So if you don't know that at the beginning, you're like, wait, whose perspective am I in? Because it doesn't actually tell you, or at least I wasn't able to pick up on that in the audiobook. So listening to the translator's note at the very beginning that kind of discussed a little bit about this was actually really useful. The translator note was also very useful because it talked about certain things that are basically untranslatable, in that you could translate them to words that we would understand, but you would kind of be stripping away a lot of the cultural significance of certain words. So certain words were kept in the original Spanish, which I am all for. However, without that intro, I would have been a little bit lost when they came up, basically, is what I'm saying. This book is very much about magic and ritual, and it talks a lot about how certain entities want us to all be the same, and yet we're not all the same. We are all different. However, we definitely have similarities, and these characters also definitely have similarities. I enjoyed my time with it. The third audiobook I listened to this week, minus the first 8 minutes of it, which I actually listened to on Friday before I had other things to do, I listened to in its entirety on Saturday while I was going for a 33-kilometer walk. Because that's a thing I do. Yes, I got a blister. I think it's gonna be fine though. And that book is The Familiar. This is a standalone fantasy, again by Leigh Bardugo, who also wrote Ninth House and Hellbent, as well as Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which are sitting right up here. And with those 5 books read, I actually got a badge on Pagebound, which is why I was reading these things so close together. This book takes place in Spain and concerns a scullery maid who has a little bit of magic, and if she hadn't used it to make it so that the bread wasn't burnt, none of this would have happened. That's actually how the whole book opens. It talks about this, and you're going, how can burnt bread or not burnt bread change the course of everybody's lives? Well, this book tells you. Essentially, her family was Jewish, but they were forced to convert, so she has been baptized and all of those things, but if anybody finds out that she has a Jewish background, that could be very bad for her, because this is kind of the time frame of the Spanish Inquisition, which is something I know the broadest strokes about, so I can't tell you exactly when this takes place, but I can tell you I was thoroughly invested in how this was going to go. Essentially, this character is caught out by her mistress doing a little bit of magic, so her mistress tries to use her magic to up her own social standing, and it goes from there, and my goodness, it's a wild ride. Again, thoroughly enjoyed. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment, but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!